Good evening. And thank you for joining us tonight. This forum is brought to you by the Horizon House Election Forums Committee, co-sponsored by the First Hill unit of the League of Women Voters. I am Laura Weese, co-chair, along with Sam Sperry of the Election Forums Committee at Horizon House. This is the first of 3 forums to prepare voters for the November 8th general election. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome 4 candidates for 2 Seattle Municipal Judge positions: Adam Eisenberg and Puja Vadari for position 3, Damon Shadid and Nyjat Rose-Akins for position 7. We'll also be hearing speakers who are going to talk about Seattle Proposition 1A and 1B, which asks if you want to change the way we select candidates to in primary elections. We'll be looking at that in the last part of the program. So I wanted to urge Horizon House residents to please look at the flyer that was in your box. There were photos of the judicial candidates and a summary of the ballot issues. So that would be very helpful. Here is a brief description of the Seattle Municipal Court as background. As you know, Washington State has several levels of courts. Municipal and district courts are the lowest level in the state court system. A court is called a municipal court if it's run by a town or city, and a district court if it's run by a county. These courts handle traffic tickets and small crimes called misdemeanors, for which the penalty is less than 1 year in jail and $5,000 fine. When people are convicted of misdemeanors, they often just pay a fine, especially if it's for a driving violation like speeding or parking in the wrong place. If they are sentenced to jail, they're locked up in local jails, not in state prisons. The heaviest sentences imposed by municipal court are for gross misdemeanors, such as driving under the influence, DUI, domestic violence, theft, and trespass. Municipal and district courts also handle smaller civil matters. These others were criminal. They operate small claims court where people can sue for debts up to $2,500. I hope that's the current figure. And Seattle Municipal Court has jurisdiction over several specialized courts, focusing on specific types of offenders, special community needs, and rehabilitative justice program. These courts, there are 5 that I could find. There's the Seattle Community Court, the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, Mental Health Court, Seattle Veterans Treatment Court, and Seattle Youth Traffic Court. Seattle Municipal Court has 7 judges. Each is elected for a 4-year term. Every other year, these judges elect a presiding judge who serves for a 2-year term. The presiding judge has responsibilities for the management and administration of the court. Currently, Judge Adam Eisenberg is the presiding judge. All 7 judges are up for re-election this year. Only 2 have challengers. Tonight, we bring you the candidates for the 2 challenged positions on the ballot, positions 3 and 7. Later, we will introduce speakers on Seattle Proposition 1. I'm now going to turn the mic over to our moderator, Bobby Spaeth.
Hi, thank you very much, Laura. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you. I don't know why nobody could see me, but
That's all right.
That's all right. Maybe I'll appear later.
For position 3, the candidates are Adam Eisenberg and Puja Vadadi. For position 7, the candidates are Nyjat, I hope I did that right, Rose-Akins and Damon Shadid, who have agreed to let me use their first names. And for the benefit of our audience, tonight's ground rules, the candidates will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes for a closing statement, and they'll have 1 minute to answer a series of questions. We thank you, candidates, in advance for adhering to the timers who will keep us on track and make sure you have all an equal chance to be heard. An on-screen warning sign will alert the candidates that they have 15 seconds remaining, and if necessary, they'll get a final sign to finish, please. Now, this is a forum, not a debate. There'll be no rebuttals, but if a candidate wants to, they may include such a remark if they wish in their closing statements. So we begin with a 3-minute long opening statement responding to the question they've been sent. Please tell us why you are a candidate for judge on the Seattle Municipal Court and what your goals and ambitions will be and how you plan to accomplish these goals. And our responses will be in order of rotation, following at the beginning here with alphabetical order. So that makes Adam Eisenberg up front. Your turn, Judge Eisenberg.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I joined the bench in 2017 with extensive legal experience, 7 years as a criminal prosecutor, 5 years as a civil defense attorney, and 13 years as a commissioner and magistrate. As the only LGBTQ+ and Jewish member of my bench, my lived experiences facing prejudice and bullying inform my belief that everyone should be treated equally under the law. My diverse background is one of the reasons my colleagues chose me this summer to be their presiding judge. Municipal courts present an important opportunity for restorative justice and diversion. For many of the people who come before me, this is their first stop in the legal system. I want it to be their last. To achieve this, I focus on 3 key concerns. First, I acknowledge our past. Restorative justice demands that we recognize our courts have been plagued by systemic racism and prejudice. Generations of injustice must be corrected through honest dialogue and reforms that address the root causes of criminal behavior while providing alternatives to jail. Second, I see the individual. I know the people who come to my court have experienced trauma and abuse. Understanding that trauma is critical to providing them with effective interventions. I grew up with an abusive father, and I know treatment is critical to healing the survivors, families, and abusers. That's why I helped create the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, a community-based program that serves as an alternative to jail. DVIP provides individualized treatment to break cycles of abuse and trauma. Third, I do my part to move the needle towards justice. One example is my work on GR 22, that stands for General Rule 22. It's a court rule that applies to the entire state, and it restricts access to family court records and guardianship records, so those records can stay private. They won't show up on your internet search. I realized 4 years ago that our chemical dependency evaluations and our mental health evaluations and treatment reports were all going onto the public portal. So 4 years ago, I suggested that we amend this rule to include therapeutic courts. And I'm proud to say this summer, the Washington State Supreme Court unanimously approved my rule change, and now defendants' rights, our individual records, are being protected. I'm proud to say that I've been endorsed by the Seattle Times, former Governor Christine Gregoire, Supreme Court Chief Justice Stephen Gonzalez and Justice Mary Yu, King County Council members Jeannie Cole-Wells and Dave Up-the-Grove, City Council President Deborah Juarez, Council Member Andrew Lewis, former Council Member Sally Bagshaw. I've been endorsed by local Democrats, unions, prosecutors, public defenders, defense attorneys, and more. I've been rated exceptionally well qualified by the King County Bar and other minority bar associations, and I would very much like your support for a second term. Thank you.
Our next candidate.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Unmute, Barb.
I did. Oh, so much for technology. Nyjat Rose-Akins is our next candidate. And she needs to be unmuted. Yeah. Ms. Rose-Akins needs to be our next candidate.
Okay, I am unmuted. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes. Thank you for this opportunity. I am Nyjat Rose-Akins and I'm running for position 7 on the Seattle Municipal Court bench. I love Seattle. I became a US citizen here, but I've seen it erode with the breakdown of collaboration across the city. I'm running for Seattle Municipal Court to help repair this breakdown, to improve community confidence in the court, and to return to an individualized approach to judicial decision-making. I'm running because I've spent the last 12 years working with victims of crime in Seattle and managing our community relationships with police. In my 12 years at the city attorney's office, I have partnered with community members, government officials, law enforcement, and businesses. I've seen firsthand that issues affecting communities are rarely resolved in silos. Real change takes collaboration from everyone involved, a willingness to listen, and taking responsibility when things are not working. Systems can always be better. And I believe I'm the candidate that can make Seattle Municipal Court better. I've worked in the public sector in Seattle for my entire legal career. I worked in the Seattle City Attorney's Office's criminal division for the first 6 of those years. And in that role, I developed a great understanding of all the types of cases that come before the court. While working in the criminal division, I tried over 60 cases in Seattle Municipal Court. I resolved cases in mental health court, community court, and domestic violence court. My awareness for how a criminal case impacts all those involved has further deepened since serving regularly as a pro tem judge, which is also known as basically a temporary judge. If a judge goes on vacation or is sick, I'm able to serve in that capacity. So in that role, I've adjudicated misdemeanor cases, presided over packed dockets and hearings on arraignments, hearings, anti-harassment orders, and even sentencing cases. These experiences in the city attorney's office and serving as a pro tem judge have shaped my judicial philosophy. I understand that the court cannot single-handedly solve all the problems affecting our communities, but by being innovative and willing to try meaningful alternative approaches, it can change the course of someone's life. Judges should lead with compassion, but they also have to consider the facts presented and the law. My approach to decision-making from the bench is to listen first, decide last, and never let my ego interfere with fulfilling my judicial responsibilities. Seattle Municipal Court needs a fresh perspective and new leadership, and I have the right experiences for right now. Additionally, I am also endorsed by former Governor Gregoire. I am endorsed by a number of judges, mainly Seattle Municipal Court, former judges, as well as for former Mayor Durkin. And
Thank
so
you.
for those
Thank you
reasons,
very much.
thank you.
All right, our next speaker will be Damon Shadid. And unmute, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Horizon House, for having me. My name is Judge Damon Shadid. I'm the incumbent in this race for position 7. I've been serving for 8 years. You know, I was proud to be the first Arab American ever popularly elected to the bench in the state of Washington. And for the past 8 years, I came with a singular focus. I wanted to do things better. I wanted to do things more effectively, and I wanted to be creative. And I know Horizon House residents, that's one of your guiding lights, is to be creative in your everyday life. And I completely agree with that. And so this creativity drove me to revive programs and to restructure programs at the Seattle Municipal Court so that we could handle the small crimes in this town better, more effectively, and get people out of the system that they've been wrapped up in for so long. Now, I expect we're going to hear a lot about community court, and I have a lot to say about that as well. But community court is a program that I was able to negotiate with the prosecution and defense counsel over a period of 2 years to create a brand new community court that is different from almost every other community court in the state. We are able to help people on their first court appearance. We are able to get them through the system, get them the services they need, and get them out of the criminal legal system quickly, efficiently, effectively, and compassionately. I'm very proud of this program, and I'm going to be happy to talk more about it later. Second, mental health court. I've been presiding over it for the last 4 years. When I came into mental health court, the court was dwindling. We had very few people coming into the court because people weren't happy with the services they were receiving in the court. I restructured the court. I negotiated with the prosecution and defense for new sentencing guidelines, and we were able to hire a new clinician. Now, mental health court deals with much more dangerous people than you have in community court. And so it's very important to treat them in a way that's both compassionate, but safe for the community as well. And what this third-party clinician does is it helps create release plans for these more dangerous people so that instead of decompensating in jail, where they're released out on the street more dangerous, we're able to connect them to very strict services on very strict release plans and get them mental health treatment, substance use treatment, and a bed to sleep in instead of staying in jail. This stabilizes these people and makes them less dangerous instead of more dangerous. Now, third, we started a consolidated calendar. Now, the consolidated calendar is interesting because there are many defendants who are already working with case management in the community. And so we needed a place, a centralized place for these case managers to come and support their clients one day in court so they could spend more time out in the community. Now, I have other things that I'd like to talk about, including my work, statewide work with interpreter services, as well as my goals for next year, but I see that I'm running out of time. So I look forward to your questions and to talk about the programs that I've begun or expanded. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And our next candidate will be Puja Vadari.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Puja Vadari, and I'm running for judge in Seattle to serve the community that raised me and bring about a positive change in the culture of Seattle Municipal Court. I'm a career public defender, and my platform is centered around a recommitment to fairness, compassion, and restorative justice. At this time, I've been endorsed by every Democratic organization in King County that has chosen to endorse in this race, as well as the Washington Young Democrats, Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion, and the Women's Political Caucus. Almost all of these endorsements have been exclusive. I would be the first South Asian woman elected to this bench, and I hope that my candidacy here inspires other women and people of color to pursue judicial office throughout Seattle and King County. I chose a career in public defense because I could not stand by and watch a structurally racist, classist, and sexist system exploit the most vulnerable people in the community. I chose to stand in defense of those that the system had broken. I chose to place myself between a human being and the great power of the state, sometimes literally. But now I'm running for judge in this court because there is only so much change that a person can achieve from the trenches. In my opinion, Seattle Municipal Court is less professional and less effective than any other regional court in which I've practiced. In my last year as a public defender at this very court, I saw that it had lost its institutional independence from the city attorney's office, and its approach perpetuated injustice. Recidivism and homelessness have grown worse, not despite this court, but because of it. I've overturned my entire career right now to bring my diversity of experience from what I've learned in practice to the bench. I believe that Seattle Municipal Court has the power to do so much more for the communities of Seattle than it can do right now. Programs like community court, mental health court, as well as the community resource center in the court can be expanded to better address the root causes of recidivism: poverty, lack of access to essential services, untreated mental illness, chronic homelessness, and of course, addiction. Where those programs fall short is due to a failure of understanding by many of the judges on the bench of how these challenges interact to prevent a person from getting back on their feet, and a lack of respect for the human being at the center of a case, be that the victims, witnesses, and defendants. This is where my extensive and my very recent experience as a public defender will benefit everyone who walks through those doors. It's not through my upbringing or identity, but my experience representing thousands of human beings from all walks of life that I've learned how to listen, how to understand, and how to reach people different from me and coming from the most desperate conditions. I love being an attorney, and I loved being a public defender because I felt purpose in protecting the most vulnerable from an indifferent system. I've managed caseloads as large as 200, and I've taken 11 cases to trial, and I've prepared 100 more. I really believe that Seattle Municipal Court has the power and potential to promote public safety with a lot of their tools. And if elected, I'll dedicate my career to public safety and the faithful application of the law. And thank you for your time.
Our next section of this forum is involves answers to 1 minute with 1 minute answers to questions that have been submitted by our residents and the League of Women Voters. The first question is, what do you consider to be the 3 most important attributes of a good judge? And we will be starting with Nyjat Rose-Akins.
Let me unmute. The 3 most important attributes of a good judge, I think compassion. As a number of the other candidates stated, we are in municipal court and individuals need the compassion. We can be compassionate while also holding people accountable. So compassion, I think we also need to be flexible. There are so many different types of individuals that are coming through the court that a one-size-fits-all approach is not appropriate. We need to look at the individual. So flexibility, compassion, and I think also thoroughness. A number of individuals who are committing crimes are maybe have cases all over. And I think in order to really properly serve them, you really need to understand what's happening and where else they may be committing crimes to really figure out a better holistic approach to serving them.
Thank you. Our next response will be from Damon Shadid.
The 3 most important, I think, are creativity, empathy, and awareness. Now, creativity is important because the judicial role can be very confining, and many judges don't care to think outside of the box in order to think about new and better programs that can better address both crime and defendants. Empathy is so important because we have to be able to understand what somebody else is going through, to listen to them, and to understand the trauma that they may have gone through in the past that led them to the situation they're in now. And finally, awareness. We have to be aware of the impact of crime on the community, but also the impact of the court on the individual. And we have to be aware of that to make it better. And in order to be aware, you have to accept very hard truths, such as institutional racism, such as unfairness in the system when it comes to bail reform and so many other things. And so I think this awareness is one of the most key parts of being a judge. Thank you.
And our next response will come from Puja Vadari.
Thank you. I think the 3 most important attributes of a judge would be impartiality, competence, and composure. The most important attribute of a judge is that they are able to preside over a matter with the utmost impartiality. Although they can bring their diversity of experience from the bench, whether it be from prosecution, civil practice, or criminal defense, they still need to understand that their role is not to be a second prosecutor in the room or a second defense attorney, but actually to be a gatekeeper of the law. And that kind of leads me into my second most important quality here, which is competence. A judge needs to know the letter of the law as perfectly. They need to understand what the most up-to-date laws are, and they need to know that what they're doing right there affects so many other lives in that courtroom, not just the ones that are there. And composure is very important too. A judge needs to be the coolest head in the courtroom, to be able to stay cool and calm when the courtroom becomes emotional and tumultuous, and to make decisions from their brain, not from how they're reacting to the way a defendant or an attorney has been in the courtroom. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Adam Eisenberg.
Yes, well, thank you. I have to say that everyone has very good suggestions. And so I'm actually going to reframe the question to what are 3 roles a judge needs to have. The first is in the courtroom. That's where the defendants, the victims, all the parties come. It's really important that you give everyone a fair opportunity to have their case heard and to rule as fairly as you can under the circumstances presented. Second, judges need to be actively working with other judicial officers, court administrators, and staff to improve the court system, to address systemic racism, to ensure quality in our court system. As presiding judge, that's what I work on every day. And third, outside the courtroom, judges need to be involved in the community. I practice the martial art of Aikido. I teach at the University of Washington. I think it's really important that we have an outside perspective that keeps us grounded in the community we live in. Thank you.
Now, question number 2 goes first. A member of the bench, as a member of the bench, what role, if any, do you believe the court can take to provide equal access to the judge, to justice? And Damon Shadid, you're up first.
Well, let me tell you about one thing that I've done that it might not be sexy, but I'm very proud of it, and that's my work with interpreter services. So before I came to the bench, I specialized in representing non-citizen defendants in the criminal legal system. When I came to the bench, I took over the interpreter services department. I shouldn't say took it over. I became the judicial liaison for the interpreter services department. And in that role, I was able to rewrite the bench card that all judges use when dealing with interpreters. I did this with the help of the staff, but I did take the lead in that role. And now every judge in the state uses that bench card whenever an interpreter comes into the room, which increases access to justice for people who do not speak English as a first language. I also helped rewrite the ethics rules for interpreters, as well as we have regular sessions at the Seattle Municipal Court to train interpreters better.
The next
So this is just one way that I'm helping with access to justice, and I'd like to talk about more. Thank you.
The next response will be from Puja Vadari.
I'm so sorry. Can I see the question one more time?
Yes, as a member
Thank
of the
you.
bench, what role, if any, do you believe the court can take to provide equal justice?
Sure. I believe that the role of the judiciary can play a really big part in providing equal justice, and that does have a lot to do with understanding that each person that's in front of you does have a different life experience and does bring different characteristics to the courtroom. And although everybody needs to be treated equally under the law, that doesn't necessarily mean everybody needs to be treated exactly the same. There is an aspect of equity needing to be taken into consideration when it comes to perhaps imposing bail on people. The equity aspect needs to be taken into consideration. $1,000 for one person may not mean the same thing for somebody who has any money to their name. It certainly means the world to somebody who maybe has $5 in their pocket at that moment. And so a judge needs to be cognizant that not everybody has the same resources and the same opportunities. And you need to make sure that you're taking that into consideration when making any kind of judgment on the bench.
Thank you. Our next respondents will come from Adam Eisenberg.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening, I am involved in the Domestic Violence Intervention Project, and that's designed to do equal access by individualizing the treatment. But I have to be honest, we've only been able to do treatment for heteronormative not white, but men in general. We need to expand this to do LGBTQ plus intervention. We need to expand it for women who are primarily victims but have found themselves charged with a crime. All of these are programs that we're trying to create because they don't exist now. Recognizing that they don't exist and trying to create them is creating equal access to justice. We also need to come up with culturally competent treatment for different communities that aren't addressed by the standard traditional heteronormative male. That's one example of how I'm working to create more equal access to justice by expanding our program to other communities and other individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next response will come from Nyjat Rose-Akins.
Thank you. So something that I have actually done as working as a temporary judge in King County District Court is converting fines and fees to community service. A number of the individuals that I have seen coming in to address traffic infractions are usually English as a second language, and they are representing themselves. And watching that dynamic, it's unfortunate that, you know, some people can have an attorney that can appear in front of the court and get the case dismissed, whereas someone who's not well versed may not quite understand. So in some of those court cases, I've been able to discuss and talk with individuals who have fines and fees for traffic infractions and converting some of those to community service to better help them not necessarily have additional costs to the court, but can also pay off those debts and complete their case.
Thank you. We're now going on to question number 3. The community court system was established 2 years ago. I hope that's correct, judges and candidates. In August of 2020, is it doing what it was intended to do? If not, what changes will be need to be made in your view? Lead off, Puja Vadari.
So the community court right now, unfortunately, is not doing what it initially was set out to do. And that is through, ever since the city attorney did change hands, they implemented this program called the High Utilizer Initiative, which has a list of individuals on that who have suffered from severe mental illness and who are chronically homeless, but are contributing to the revolving door of crime and jail. And because they are frequently have contacts with the criminal justice system, the city attorney has decided that they are no longer to be eligible for community court. And unfortunately, much of the bench has signed on to that idea that these individuals that most need these resources are no longer eligible for the community court diversion program. And I believe that's putting a significant barrier to a lot of people that do need access to that court right now. What I would change is to recommit the court to allowing people who most need resources like community court back into those kinds of diversion programs and really put a hard stop to crimes of poverty, homelessness, and desperation, which are exactly what the community court is designed to help prevent. Thank you.
And the next response will be from Adam Eisenberg.
Thank you. So the community court is meant to be a triage court. It's meant to help people, mostly folks who are on the street or have committed small, street type crimes, and connect them to social services and move them out of the court system. And it is very successful with those groups of people that fit that profile. However, there are some folks that commit those crimes, but they have mental illness or chemical dependency, and they're not a good fit for community court. We have other diversion opportunities. The mental health court has a diversion opportunity, and those folks need to be tracked to a different court. So I think community court is very successful at dealing with the population it was meant to design. The challenge is, how do we deal with the folks that don't fit in there? And I think that's an evolution that's happening, trying to figure out what's the best way to get them what they need. Some folks with mental illness and chemical dependency really struggle to even take advantage of the services. So it's an evolving system, but I think it is serving the population it needs to. Thank you.
Our next response will be from Nyjat Rose-Akins.
I do not think community court is functioning to its potential. I have had the opportunity to observe other community courts in King County, and the services and the structure around their community court is far more intensive and helpful to the individuals who are in fact committing crimes. I believe the Seattle Municipal Court Community Court doesn't provide the actual structure and or assistance that it states that it does. For instance, an individual who commits a theft, the court will only take potentially 15 days of jurisdiction or time. And if we're saying these are the individuals that need the most help and we really want to give them proper services, 15 days is not a sufficient amount of time to properly assist those individuals. So I believe community court can definitely be restructured to really help individuals who are suffering.
Thank you. And our next response and final for this question, Damon Shadid.
So it's important to understand that my opponent has not been in Seattle Municipal Court for the past 6 years, has never been in community court, has never watched a single community court calendar, and has never been in a community court meeting. We are highly effective in what we do, but let me be clear, we are also evolving. We meet prosecution, defense, probation, and judges every other week. We talk about how the program needs to change, if we need to pivot, and we work collaboratively to make sure that we're giving the best program possible. We have amended this agreement dozens of times to address problems with the court. Ms. Rose-Akins hasn't been a part of any of that, but she comes in and criticizes the court for not being effective, and that's just false. 75% of the people who enter the court graduate with services. Those kinds of numbers are absolutely incredible, and I will put that up against any other community court in the state.
The next question will be, what factors should a judge consider when deciding when to send an offender to community court? And the first response will be from Damon Shadid.
Sure. So community court, we wanted to address bail reform and systemic racism in very particular ways. And so we structured it so the judges are the gatekeeper. So every single defendant who comes through the court, if they're charged with a certain crime, are referred to community court, but then a judge makes an individualized decision about whether or not they should be able to benefit from the program. The things we look at is, how serious is the crime? There's property destruction if you break a mirror on a car, and there's property destruction if you throw a brick through a window. One of those is good for community court. The other one absolutely is not. And so judges have to take an individualized approach to each one to say, okay, this person is suffering from much higher barriers. We need to put them in veterans or mental health court or the consolidated calendar instead of community court. So these individualized determinations by judges are absolutely essential to our program.
And the next responder will be Puja Vadari.
Thank you. And just so I didn't miss the question, it's what factors should a judge consider when deciding which offenders should be eligible for community court? Thank you. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Certainly, I think the level of the offense is something that needs to be taken into consideration, because you need to take into consideration who the victims are for each crime. So if there is a person who is a victim, community court may not be the right avenue for it. But when you're talking about property related crimes or crimes that are a result of desperation or poverty, I think those are the ones that are the most eligible for community court, only because those are the people that are committing crimes, not because of any ill intent, but because they lack the resources to help themselves. They are struggling in such a way that a short contact with the court can help them the best. I believe the purpose of community court is not to extend court jurisdiction, but it's to limit the interaction that they have with the court system and really help them stay out of the court system.
Thank you. Next is Adam Eisenberg.
Thank you. Echoing really what the conversation here is, it's an individualized process. You have to look at each case and decide, is this a case that's appropriate for a community court? There's a general grid, if you will, of certain charges, but as Judge Shadid has pointed out, the judge can decide, I don't think this theft because of what was stolen or the circumstances, or this property destruction is appropriate for community court because this individual, it's not going to help what they need. So it's really critical to understand the judges have the ability to decide whether someone goes into community court. They can also decide whether someone doesn't go into community court. It's always based on the individual, based on the details of the crime. Virtually every crime has a victim, but the bottom line is, what is really, is it a victim that's really been traumatized or not? It's just an individualized process, and that's how we do it. Thank you.
And finally, Nyjat Rose-Akins.
Thank you. I believe it should be an individualized process, but my issue with community court in its current iteration is that it's not. As my opponent stated, that I have not been in the court, but I have reviewed the court's dockets and I've reviewed community court cases, and I've seen cases where individuals who are committing thefts upwards to $900+ and they automatically get routed into community court. So it's those sort of decisions where I feel as if we need to really go back to an individualized approach and really look at each individual who are committing crimes to determine who is a good fit for community court. I think alternative courts are important and they are necessary, but everyone is not necessarily a good fit if they are not willing to do what is necessary.
Thank you. Our next question, one of the responsibilities of the presiding judge is to recommend policies and procedures that improve the court's effectiveness. What policies and procedures most need the attention of the presiding judge. And we'll start off with Nyjat Rose-Akins.
So having never been a presiding judge, but I think the main role of a presiding judge is to really create collaborations and partnerships. Looking at the Seattle Municipal Court, or even being in Seattle, Seattle is such a resource-rich environment, and I don't believe that we are properly leveraging all of those resources and partnerships to the best of our ability to properly stand up alternative programs that can actually be robust and provide the necessary treatment and or pipeline to jobs and or housing. So I think the role of the presiding judge, in addition to assisting with policies, is really to create partnerships with businesses and other government entities to properly be able to put forward robust court programs.
Damon, you're up next.
The role of the presiding judge is to be a visionary, to set the court's agenda, to manifest that to the public, to educate the public on what we do, to collaborate with justice partners. And one of the most difficult things, I think, Judge Eisenberg will tell you, is to wrangle all the judges together and get them to agree on anything. Being the presiding judge is a tough job. Seattle Municipal Court is an enormous bureaucracy with its own challenges. And it's important for a presiding judge not to get lost in that bureaucracy, but really keep that 10,000-foot approach and to really look at how can this court work better and what can I do to help it work better.
Thank you. Next response, Puja Vadari.
Thank you. The role of the presiding judge is, they're the leader of the court. They need to lead by setting an example. They need to create a work environment that is not toxic, in which the staff who work for the court and the attorneys who come before the court are able to do their jobs without fear of discrimination or mistreatment. It's also the role of the presiding judge to also make sure that all of the judges are collaborating together and feeling like they are being heard and supported. They are essentially presiding over the entirety of that court, right? And so people need to feel supported that work through that court, and they need to know that the presiding judge is out there looking for everybody's best interest and making sure that the court is being run efficiently, and that making sure the environment is safe for everybody in that courtroom, be it the staff or the people who walk in and out of that courtroom. And also making sure that any of the court's programs are being supported and resourced properly.
Thank you. And Judge Eisenberg, you're up last.
As having been presiding for the last 2 months, I'd have to say 1 minute is not enough time to explain what my job is. Everyone's comments, because they're all true. My job on a daily basis is negotiating with the judges, negotiating with the staff, trying to negotiate with the defense and the prosecution, who all come at me with different issues that they have, different concerns. I have to negotiate with COVID because we have to figure out how to work our technology in the courtroom, how to give people more access to the courtroom in a time when they can't physically come. It's a very interesting, challenging experience. It is like herding cats, but it's not just the judges who are the cats, the defense, they're cats, the prosecutors are cats, everybody's, and they all have their own issues. And I forgot to mention city council and the mayor's office. And by the way, we have budget cut we have to deal with. It's a very interesting, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a very interesting and challenging job.
Thank you. And now our last question will be, what can be done about municipal court backlog? And Judge Eisenberg, you get the first shot.
Well, actually, our court has been more successful in dealing with some parts of the backlog. For example, we've been doing jury trials since July of 2020 when other courts weren't. So we actually don't have a backlog in the jury trial department. We do have a backlog in the pretrial department, and the city attorney is filing more charges. The police are making more arrests. So that's kind of increasing our backlog. It's very challenging right now because we have staff shortages, in part due to COVID, in part due to hiring issues. So we're not able to operate full courtrooms. In other words, our normal number of courtrooms aren't available to us. The city and the defense are also facing shortages in their staffing, which makes it really challenging for all of us. So I think we're just moving forward as best we can, trying to be flexible with the rules, trying to figure out how we can accommodate folks' rights. and get the cases through the door. It's a slow process, but we are making progress.
Next response, Nyjat.
Yes, I think as Judge Eisenberg just stated, the Seattle Municipal Court is not as bad as some of the other courts, but I think it's an issue countywide, citywide, statewide, due to COVID. So I think the best thing, I think, for Seattle Municipal Court specifically, I know that they did have some budget cuts over the last few years, and I know it's budget season coming up. So I think maybe advocating for more budget to really assist them in really trying to get through some of this backlog. I don't think there's necessarily more police reports coming in. I think it's more so that the city attorney's office may be filing more cases. But I think with that, you would have to figure out more staffing to help with that.
Thank you. Next, Damon.
One of the really interesting byproducts of the community court program is how effectively and efficiently we've been able to clear backlogs. Fully 60% of filed cases go through community court, but instead of being handled by 7 different judges, now they're handled by 1 community court judge 3 days a week. And the reason why our touch is lighter is because we're so highly effective that we're able to get people into the program and graduated in a very effective and quick way, which has done wonders for clearing our backlog in Seattle Municipal Court. Let me tell you something. We created community court without asking for an extra penny from the city council. We did that with our own existing resources. And this is what creativity can do. We can create programs without additional money that are more effective than the present system has to work. We should do more of this, not less.
And finally, Pooja, it's your turn.
Thank you. I agree with Judge Shadid's sentiments there. I do think filtering people through a lot more diversion programs that are expedited ways to connect with resources and then close that case immediately is going to foster a lot more judicial efficiency there, and it's going to be able to clear out a lot of that backlog. I also think there's been a lot of poor decisions made on this court in terms of how the law is handled here. Certainly better judgments and a better respect for the law will make the court more efficient. It certainly will decrease the number of cases that may actually end up even going to trial, because a lot of cases might have better decisions that will dismiss them pre-trial. And also a lot of the issues that I had seen working at the public defender's office is that the number of appeals that are coming out of municipal court is astronomical. And when decisions are overturned on appeal, it comes right back to that court, re-traumatizing the witnesses and again, making the courtroom a lot less efficient.
Thank you. And now we have come to the last part of our candidates forum, the closing statements. You'll have 2 minutes to close in your choice, and we'll begin with Pooja. Okay.
Sorry, I lost my mute button. Thank you so much. I'm often introduced as a career public defender or described as uniquely able to bring the public defender's perspective to the bench. I believe that perspective will improve Seattle Municipal Court. A public defender's role, it derives from the Constitution and how each person has a right to counsel. It is a role that balances the fundamental rights of the individual against the power of the government and strives to see that those rights are not trampled, despite the vast gulf of resources available to each. A public defender is trained in the law and then tempered in the crucible of constant practice. Unlike a prosecutor who has discretion or a private defense attorney who can choose their clients, a public defender must take their clients as they come and defend them as best they can, because every person is entitled under our adversarial legal system to a competent defense. But an effective public defender learns more than just criminal law and procedure. They understand what has brought each defendant into the courtroom and how the lives of everyone in the community around them will fundamentally change by what happens in the courtroom, because public defenders see it every day. I mentioned before that as a public defender, I chose to place myself between human beings and the power of the government. In that role, I handled hundreds of cases and thousands of clients from all walks of life with every conceivable history and complicated set of limitations that prevented them from interacting productively with the legal system. I'm now choosing to bring this diversity of experience and what I've learned in practice to the bench. Based on my experience, we can have it all. We can deter crime, we can rehabilitate offenders, and we can improve public safety. By exercising good judgment grounded in the law and cognizant of the real consequences of how we exercise judicial power and restraint. Public trust is the most important asset of the courts. A community is safest when judges, police, and prosecutors are believed to be acting in the best interest of the community. It is a public defender's commitment to the law, justice, and public trust that protects not just the individuals that come through the court, but also the credibility of the court itself. If elected, I promise to bring that commitment to the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Damon.
Thank you for hearing us today. I'm very proud to be endorsed by, had the sole endorsement of every single endorsing Democratic institution in Seattle. That includes the King County Democrats, every Democratic district, the King County Young Democrats, and Democrats for Diversity and Inclusion. I also have the sole endorsement of 9 Supreme Court justices, as well as judges from the Courts of Appeal, from the Superior Court, from the district courts and municipal courts. These judges have all seen one thing. They've seen the changes I've made, and they're impressed with them, and they want to see more of it. And that's what I intend to do. I've done a lot, but there is so much more work to do. As I move on to a trial calendar next year, I'd like to take a serious look at allowing jury selection so that you guys don't have to be packed in to a jury room waiting for your name to be called, but instead you could have it over Zoom. Superior Court's already done this. They've already shown us the way. We should do the same thing because jury service should be easy, not hard. We should also look at increasing how much we pay juries. We should look at how we can diversify our jury pools to give people more fair trials. There's so many other ways that we can expand our diversion programs, but we have to have people on our court who can work with other community justice partners. I have a proven track record silos. That's why I'm endorsed by many city council people as well, because I work across the aisle. Now, sometimes change is hard, and that's true. And there are some people who haven't liked the changes I've made, but there are so many more people who understand the value of those changes, who understand that we have to get to the root causes of what is causing the crime if we're going to improve the safety in our town. That's why we need to have 2 competing things. We need to have empathy, but we also need to have community safety. And that's what I have dedicated the last 8 years to, and I will dedicate the next 4 years to it if I'm reelected. I'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
Next is Nyjat.
Thank you all for this opportunity and this time to really speak with you and your community. I have gone out to many communities as an assistant city attorney and spoken with communities in the CID, communities in downtown, communities that are concerned with what is happening within the city. So not only do I have the perspective as a prosecutor who has seen the cases in court, but I've also seen the other effects and the community impact and the community's voiced concerns. I've also been able to review and see, as someone who was in community court, I was a community court prosecutor, and seeing this iteration of community court, I think we can do better. Community court is to service a group of people who we feel need resources and help. And if those people need resources and help, 14 days is not going to be a sufficient amount of time to really help them and connect them with services. Reviewing some other models of community court where individuals actually are accountable and are actually meeting with service providers and actually come into the court on a weekly or bi-weekly basis just to tell the court what's happening. That's the model of community court that is necessary. That's the model of community court that we need. It is about community, and it is about giving back to the community, and it is about the community being a part of this process. And my understanding of how this works from a civil perspective, I think really makes me very equipped to, sorry, the screen, equipped to really be able to hit the ground running, because I understand all the different components and dynamics necessary to stand up a court, and also the partnerships you need to stand up a court. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. And finally, Adam Eisenberg.
Thank you. In my opening, I mentioned I'm presiding judge and I work very hard on the Domestic Violence Intervention Project. But on a lighter note, I'm also co-director of our Seattle Youth Traffic Court. That's where Garfield High School students come to court once a month and serve as judges, jurors, prosecutors, and defense attorneys for other teenagers who've gotten traffic tickets in Seattle. It's a collaboration with Seattle Law School, Garfield High School. Seattle police officers volunteer their time to serve as expert witnesses, and the court. It's a wonderful program, and it's a diversion program because traffic tickets are dismissed, so there's no fines, and parents don't have to pay increased insurance. At the end of the day, experience matters. That's what Justice Mary Yu said on my website in her endorsement for me. And I just have to point out that my opponent has been a public defender for 4 years, and she's never sat on the bench as a judge. So when she talks so passionately about the role of a public defender, she's absolutely right. A defense attorney's job is to look out for the defendant's rights. But I don't think she understands, as a judge, you have to look out for the victim's rights as well, the community's rights. You have to worry about the jurors. You have to worry about the court staff, everybody in the judicial community. You have to look out for those people. I'm on one of the most diverse benches in the country. There's 7 judges. Of those, 4 of them are women. Of the 7 judges, 3 of them are Black. 1 of them is Asian. 1 of them is Lebanese American. I'm Jewish and gay. We have an extraordinarily diverse. And by the way, 4 of those judges are former public defenders. So we're not missing that perspective on the bench. I believe that I have the experience and the track record to deserve another 4 years, and I would very much appreciate your vote. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight. Please have a lovely evening.
And thank you, all of you, all 4 of you, for joining us. You've educated us greatly, and you've sent us to an educational program to prepare for this. And we are grateful for your education for our community. And now it's Laura Weese's turn to deal with an even more complicated new idea in voting. It's all yours, Laura. Unmute.
Okay, hi.
Did the judges leave?
Yeah, you're excused. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you to the judge candidates. That was great, very educational.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that the participants in the second part of our program are coming on. Here's Logan and Linnea, and I think Sam is here, right? And I don't know why, I mean, I'm not on the screen, right?
Yes, you are.
Oh, I am, okay. I don't know whether to be happy or glad, but no, that's good, I should be. Again, I'm Laura Weese. I'm co-chairing with Sam Sperry, the Election Forums Committee here at Horizon House. What we're going to do now is try to see if we can understand Seattle Proposition 1, which has 2 parts, 1A and 1B. And this ballot issue is going to ask if we want to change the way we select candidates in primary elections. If you have your flyer with you, it's written out there, but there are 2 questions on the ballot. So listen carefully. The first question, that is 2 questions as part of Proposition 1. The first question is, after there is a brief introduction to the 2 different methods that are on the ballot, approval voting and ranked choice voting, of which we'll hear back. But the first question is, should either of these measures be adopted, be enacted into law? So you first have to decide yes or no. Do you want to adopt either, or do you want to change the method of voting? And then the second question asks, regardless of whether you voted yes or no in the first question, which of the measures do you prefer? So you've got a yes and no question on changing voting methods, and then a question on which one you prefer. So our first speaker is going to be Sam Sperry, the co-chair of the Horizon House Election Forums Committee, and he will speak on for the point of view of not making any changes in the election methods. Sam, are you there?
I'm ready, Laura, and thank you very much. I want to explain to our audience that here at Horizon House, we do not endorse candidates or ballot issues. And so the position that I am about to read, which is in opposition to making any change, is not a position of Horizon House or our committee or me, but rather is the position taken by David Brewster, who is the editor of Post Alley, which is an online news and feature magazine. And this statement that David prepared was published on the website on September the 9th. And when we invited David to come and present this position, it turned out he had a conflict. So I was agreed to read this statement on his behalf. So David says the timing of these changes is awful. In politics, as in these proposed electoral changes, timing is critical. I think the timing is bad for instituting ranked choice voting or other changes. Let me give 3 reasons. The first, voters today are from Missouri and are very skeptical about such changes. The new voting systems are complicated, which breeds resistance and avoidance. And it's not very clear who is behind the proposals and what hidden agendas they may have. Ranked choice voting, for instance, is heavily funded by an unknown Wisconsin businesswoman, Catherine Gale, who sold her family's company and now has funds to invest in these centrist national campaigns. Nor have there been enough results from RCV to feel confident about winners and losers. And is centrism the proper answer to our political woes? The second reason is the poor track record of recent changes in voting in Seattle. One was the shift to district elections for 7 of the 9 city council members, advocated by some conservative business folk, and ended up by cementing in the more liberal council members. The other, democracy vouchers, is certainly catching on, but may also turn out to be a more of an incumbent protection scheme. The third reason, related to the first, is the absence of a thoughtful, comprehensive, balanced effort to produce a proposal for electoral change, which usually comes from a committee of freeholders, carefully balanced to include both parties, business and labor, people of color, and so forth. I grant that assembling such a talented entity in polarized Seattle is both difficult and lengthy, but a narrow-based advocacy is bound to raise skepticism and give reluctant voters another reason, along with its complexity, to decline to vote or distrust democracy. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sam. So I hope you're all following now that Sam has been addressing the first of the 2 questions in Prop 1. And as he read David Brewster's statement, giving reasons for saying, don't make any changes right now, that leads us into the other 2 speakers who are going to say why we should or probably should support one of the alternatives. Logan Bauer is going to present his position in favor of approval voting. Approval voting received enough signatures on an initiative to be put on the ballot. And when the city council was accepting that, they also added ranked choice voting. So there are now alternatives. Logan is a lifetime Seattle resident. He's an engineer and with his wife owns a small retail business. He ran for city council, brave person, in 2019. And so he's experienced our election system firsthand. Logan, we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Shall I get started?
Yeah, let's get started. I forgot to say you're all limited to 5 minutes. Adele is timing us here. Thank you.
All right. Well, as she mentioned, thank you so much. I'll be brief. I'm a lifetime Seattle resident. My fellow friend who is co-chair of Seattle Approves. We went to high school together in the area. So we've been a long part of the region, and we're the ones behind the citizen initiative that appears as Proposition 1A on your ballot. So everything I describe will be about Proposition 1A. So back in 2020, just before COVID settled in, we set out some volunteers to see how we could make elections in the city as representative, as fair, as basically as the best they possibly can be. And I think we have all seen examples where folks that squeak out a win and make it to the city government maybe don't always represent all of the voters. And we wanted to fix that. We wanted our candidates to be truly accountable to voters. So we looked for good ways to do that. We searched high and low across the country to find out what the best options were. And we found voting reform advocates in St. Louis who had come together after the tragic events in Ferguson, and they wanted accountability for their local governments, and they achieved that. These are just a few quotes from their voting reform in St. Louis that they passed in 2020. Congressional Representative Cori Bush said, approval voting will make sure most voters actually support the winning candidate. I'm proud to support the proposition. So our representatives work hard to earn our votes. Rasheem Aldridge, a local state rep, said similar things. I'll also highlight what we saw from Kathleen Farrell, the president of the League of Women Voters in St. Louis. She said, too many times we've elected city officials with less than 40% of the vote. The people, not special interests, should decide who runs our city. And boy, was she optimistic in St. Louis. In Seattle, in primary elections, we have candidates that win with like 20–25% of the vote. So yeah, you can imagine how special interest can really manipulate that. So we saw this reform that they were working on, that they passed in their city. 68% of St. Louis voters passed it. We looked into it and we're like, wow, this is amazing. This is the best voting system we can find anywhere in the United States. It's new and it's amazing. So what is it? This is what we're proposing. What we're saying is you should have the power on your primary city ballot to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to every single candidate. So if you support two candidates, you can give both of them a thumbs up by filling in the oval. And then any candidate you don't like, you can give a thumbs down by not filling in the oval. So in practice, what that means is rather than being forced to say, I only really like a single candidate, you can give your approval to as many candidates as you would like. The two candidates with approval from the most voters still advance to the general election. And then you decide in the general election between those final two. We saw this is a simple change. So we went to Seattle voters and we said, we didn't go to special interests. We went to the voters and we said, Seattle voters via polling, this is what we're thinking. Do you want this or not? And 74% of voters said, yeah, we would like that. We did a second poll just before we launched the initiative. 72% of voters said they wanted this. This voting method, simple, is already used in local LDs for their endorsement process. So it has been used locally before for legislative endorsement processes. So Proposition 1A, to Kathleen Farrell's point about broad support. This is from a St. Louis race before and after adoption of their equivalent of Proposition 1A, exact same system that we're proposing here. And what you see is the winner prior to that system won with 32%, which even looks good by Seattle standards. But what we saw afterwards is that the winning candidates had, the winner had 57% approval. So you can imagine what the difference is between somebody who can squeak through an election with maybe 30% of the vote versus somebody who actually appeals to almost 60% of the voters. That's going to be a candidate that really works hard to earn the support of voters. So I want to talk a little bit about, you're going to have a choice. Do you want Proposition 1A or do you want Proposition 1B? Talk real quick about ballot complexity. This is what the 1A ballot looks like. This is what the ballot 1B looks like. Mock-up from the mayoral race. It'll have anywhere from 80 to 256 ovals for 1B. We want to keep it simple. And just so you know, this is what a real ballot from Cambridge, Massachusetts looks like. With that, I will turn it over. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Logan. 5 minutes does go very fast. All right, our next speaker is Linnea Hurst. Linnea is going to present slides that have some comparisons of the two voting methods, approval voting and ranked choice voting. Linnea is a past president of the State League of Women Voters, and she's worked on a league committee studying election methods. Linnea, can we turn it over to you?
Okay, I am. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
Okay. I'm going to talk about ranked choice voting, giving a very simple exercise. I hope you all have eaten recently, since we're going to be talking about cookies. Now, there's 12 of us. We always get cookies for our coffee. And we're going to buy one kind of cookie. We've decided each person gets 4 votes, and we need a majority for the kind they get. So if we do approval voting, we just approve of 4 kinds. All right. And here's my vote, my ballot. And here's the total of the 12 people. And unfortunately, 3 of them have equal number of votes, and they all have majority. So they passed that test, but they're equal. So the person going off to the bakery wouldn't know what to do, and they'll have to have a runoff. Well, let's look at ranked choice voting. This is what it looks like because the same choices are there, but now instead of just approving, you have to say what your favorite is and so on. So here's my 4 votes. And of course, I voted for zucchini first, and chocolate chip and chocolate brownies and peanut butter. But let's see what everybody did. Oh, turns out I didn't have the majority vote. Nobody did. Unfortunately, chocolate brownies and chocolate chip each had 5 votes. Neither one of them had majority. However, the information there in all the ballots is sufficient. We don't have to go back and do a runoff. Whoops, what have I done here? Oh, somehow this is showing. Anyway, here's the choice. Here's the difference between the 2. And then I'm going to go on. And the person who wanted coconut macaroon and me who wanted zucchini, we're the only ones. So since nobody got majority and there was a tie, we need to go to I want to say the worst, that they're not the worst. Anyway, go to those who had the least say, and we're going to cut those out. And we'll start with the coconut macaroon. That person, first choice, well, we're going to get rid of the first choice And we're going to, I'm not showing the whole screen. Do you all see the whole screen?
I don't know for sure. We
That's
see
the problem.
several.
Is there some way to get rid of me? Because anyway, well, I'll just talk about it and you don't see the results. Anyway, the coconut macaroon, the first choice, is going to get wiped out. And what we're going to do with the ballots of both coconut macaroon and zucchini is we're going to move their second, third, and fourth choices up to first, second, third choices. So now the coconut macaroon person chose, go back, chose peanut butter as their second choice. So that now becomes their first choice. And we're going to add that to the peanut butter cookie first choices. And we're going to add chocolate chip to the second and gingerbread to the third. Okay. And so the first change, now we have 5. Where are we? Peanut butter. Peanut butter now has 5 votes. And there's no changes between brownies and chocolate chip. Well, but we still have zucchinis to work with. So let's go to that one. And now we're going to take out the zucchini. Oh dear. So now my second choice becomes my first choice, and that's chocolate chip. So now it's going to have 6 votes. Ooh, that's a majority. That's 50%. And chocolate, the others, no, there's no change in first choice. So what ranked choice does that approval doesn't is it has a built-in second balloting, whatever that's called. I'm losing my, because my stuff's not showing. Anyway, runoff. It has a built-in runoff because the information is all there. But those were all single winner ballots and with majority. Now, if I instead say, okay, we're going to have a multi-winner, then ranked choice becomes even more interesting. It let's say that there's another group in this big office that usually has coffee with us, but they always like gumdrop cookies. None of us like gumdrop cookies. So what we've done is a little gerrymandering. We've just drawn a line. We're just not including them in doing this. So what ranked choice does is allow them to have a choice, because if we do multiple choice, then there's 2 kinds of cookies. Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Linnea, I wish we did have more time, but we don't. We've got to end the program.
Okay.
So what
That's
I thank you. I hope that this introduction to both approval voting and ranked choice voting will at least get people's minds going, and they're going to need to look into this and spend a little more time before the before the election. So Logan, thank you very much. And
may I make a quick point of order on the mechanics of the election, unrelated to the specifics of the proposals?
Yeah. We
just want to highlight real quick for everyone, since it's a 2-part question. The part 1 is, do you want voting reform? And the part 2 is, which voting reform do you want if it passes? Even if you vote no on the first question and say, no, I do not want to want voting reform, you still have a say in which one passes, which one we use if it passes. So don't forget about the second half. Even if you vote no on the first half, don't forget you can still vote on the second half.
They still want you to choose, even if you don't want to make changes. Yes. And well, this is very helpful, and I appreciate it very much for your coming. And I just also want to, and Sam, thank you for reading David Brewster's good words. I want to make just a very big thank you to the people that made this program possible. In addition to the candidates for judges and the speakers on voting methods, there's the group of people behind the scenes. Some of you have seen Risa Ransom, who's the Horizon House events and program manager. She's the not that we couldn't do this, our technical director. Jenny Stimson created and managed the slides, so it would be easier for people to see the questions. Adele Reynolds was our very conscientious timer, and Doris Ray was her backup. So thanks to all of that crew. And I also want to say a big thanks to the audience, because it's really up to you. You are the voters. You have the power to decide which candidate for municipal court you think would be the best person to represent you, and which decision on changing or not changing voting methods, which one you would prefer. That's a big decision you're going to have to make. So ballots come out in the mail or on October 19th, not too far away, and must be postmarked by November 8th. So tune in again. We've got next Monday night a forum with the King County prosecutor candidates, and then the following Monday, October 10th, final candidates for Secretary of State. You can see us on YouTube if you missed tonight, and a replay on Horizon House TV on Thursday at 1 o'clock. Thanks so much. And I forgot to say thanks to Bobby, but many thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much.